The moving truck pulled away from the curb as Andre Johnson stood on the wide porch of his new Victorian home, breathing in the crisp autumn air. The house stood tall at the end of Oak Street, its gabled roof and intricate woodwork a testament to a bygone era. After years of careful planning and saving, he and his wife Kira had finally purchased their dream home in the prestigious Oakwood Heights neighborhood. "What do you think, kids?" Andre called over his shoulder. "Worth all the boxes we still have to unpack?" Their daughter Maya, 12 and already showing signs of her mother's quiet confidence, nodded as she gazed up at the 3-story structure. "It's like those houses in the old movies. Do I really get the room with the window seat?" "Just like we promised," Kira said, joining them on the porch. She was still wearing her hospital ID badge clipped to her blouse, having come straight from her shift as a pediatric surgeon. Their 8-year-old son Dion raced past them, his sneakers pounding up the wooden steps. "I'm going to check if the backyard's big enough for a basketball hoop," he shouted over his shoulder. Andre smiled, wrapping an arm around Kira's waist. "We did it," he whispered. "Our own piece of history in the most sought-after neighborhood in town." Kira leaned into his embrace, but her eyes were scanning the street. "Have you noticed that no one's come by to say hello? When my colleague moved into the house 3 blocks over, she said neighbors brought food for days." Andre had noticed, but he'd been trying to ignore the obvious. Since they'd arrived that morning, he'd spotted at least 4 neighbors peering out their windows or pausing their yard work to stare. None had approached. "Give them time," he said, trying to sound upbeat. "We're new. People are probably just busy." The next morning, Andre was out front, clearing some overgrown shrubs when he spotted an older woman walking a small white dog. He straightened up, wiping his brow and offering a friendly wave. "Good morning. I'm Andre Johnson. My family just moved in yesterday." The woman slowed but didn't approach the low fence separating the yard from the sidewalk. Her eyes darted over the property as if taking inventory. "Yes, I noticed the moving trucks." Her voice was clipped. "I'm Elizabeth Porter. I've lived on this street for 42 years. Andre walked closer, still smiling. "It's a beautiful neighborhood." "We're excited to be here." Elizabeth's thin lips pressed together. "This house has quite a history. The Andersons owned it for generations before they sold. Been empty nearly a year." "We fell in love with the character," Andre explained. "I work in real estate investment, and properties like this don't come on the market often." Something flickered in Elizabeth's expression. "Real estate? So you're planning to flip it?" Andre shook his head. No. This is our forever home. My wife's a surgeon at Central Hospital, and we wanted to be in a good school district for our kids." "I see." Elizabeth glanced at her watch. "Well, welcome to the neighborhood. I should continue my walk before it gets too warm." As she hurried away, Andre felt a familiar heaviness settle in his chest. He'd experienced this many times before, the polite but distant interaction, the barely concealed surprise when he mentioned their professions, the relief when the conversation ended. Inside, he found Kira organizing the kitchen, carefully arranging her collection of cookbooks. "I met one of our neighbors," he said, reaching for a glass of water. "Elizabeth Porter. Been here over 40 years, apparently." "Was she nice?" Kira asked, her voice hopeful. "Nice enough," Andre replied, not wanting to worry her. "A bit reserved." Later that afternoon, Maya and Dion wanted to explore the neighborhood park they'd spotted a block away. As they walked together as a family, Andre noticed how conversations paused when they passed. A group of men who had been chatting by their mailboxes suddenly became very interested in their phones. 2 women pushing strollers crossed to the other side of the street. At the park, Dion ran toward the playground where several children were playing. Andre watched as a boy about Dion's age looked at him with interest, clearly about to invite him to join their game, when a woman, presumably his mother, called the boy away. Within minutes, the playground had emptied, parents collecting their children with hurried excuses about dinner time and homework. Despite it being only 3 in the afternoon, Maya, more perceptive than her years might suggest, moved closer to Kira. "Mom, why is everyone leaving?" Kira exchanged a look with Andre. "Sometimes people need time to get used to new neighbors." "Sweetie." That evening, as Andre was taking out the trash, he spotted a man standing at the edge of their property, staring at the house with undisguised displeasure. The man was tall with silver-streaked hair, wearing what looked like an expensive golf shirt. "Can I help you?" Andre called out. The man seemed startled, as if he hadn't expected to be noticed. "Just looking at what you've done to the old Anderson place." "We haven't done anything yet," Andre replied evenly. Just moved in yesterday. Howard Whitman, the man said, not offering his hand.
I'm the president of the Oakwood Heights Community Association.
We take great pride in maintaining the historical integrity of this neighborhood. Andre nodded. We do too. That's why we bought here. Howard's eyes narrowed. The previous owners had to follow strict guidelines on any exterior changes. Historic district rules. I hope you've been made aware. We have all the paperwork, Andre assured him. No plans for major changes, just some repairs and restoration work. Good, Howard said curtly. We have monthly association meetings. First Thursday. You might want to attend, introduce yourselves properly. People here value tradition and community standards. The emphasis on those last words wasn't lost on Andre. Looking forward to it, he replied, keeping his tone pleasant despite the clear message being sent. After Howard left, Andre stood in the driveway longer than necessary, looking at the beautiful homes lining the street. They had saved for years for this opportunity, researched neighborhoods extensively, and fallen in love with this historic district with its excellent schools and safe streets. They had prepared themselves for some adjustment period, but the chill was unmistakable. 3 days passed without a single welcome basket or neighbor dropping by to introduce themselves. Kira noticed a woman watching her from behind curtains as she left for work. Dion came home from his first day at the new school asking why none of the kids would sit with him at lunch. On Friday evening, Andre was in the front yard planting some flowers when a car slowed and then stopped in front of their house. A younger man stepped out looking somewhat uncomfortable but determined. Hi there, he said, approaching the fence. I'm David Chen. My wife Rachel and I live about 5 houses down. For the first time since moving in, Andre felt a genuine smile cross his face. Andre Johnson. Good to meet you. David lowered his voice slightly. Look, I wanted to come by and say welcome properly. And also, well, to give you a heads up. There's been talk at the neighborhood association about your family moving in. Andre's smile faded. What kind of talk? Nothing direct, of course. Howard Whitman and his friends are too careful for that. But there's been a lot of discussion about maintaining neighborhood character and property values. Just wanted you to know what you might be walking into at the meeting next week. Andre nodded slowly. I appreciate the warning. Rachel and I think it's ridiculous, David added. We've been here 3 years and we're still considered new. But this neighborhood has an old guard that's resistant to any change. He hesitated. Some more than others. That night after the kids were asleep, Andre and Kira sat on their porch swing, the peaceful evening at odds with the tension they felt. David Chen seems nice, Kira said, leaning against Andre's shoulder. He does, Andre agreed. But one friendly neighbor doesn't outweigh what's happening here, Kira sighed. I knew we might face some adjustment, but I didn't expect this level of coldness. It's not just coldness, Andre said quietly. Howard Whitman came by while you were at work yesterday. Asked a lot of questions about our plans for the property. Mentioned how important it was to maintain the character of the neighborhood about 5 times. You think we should prepare for trouble at the association meeting? Andre nodded. David mentioned there's been talk. I think Howard and his friends are planning something. Kira straightened up, her expression hardening. Let them try. We earned our place here. We're not going anywhere. Andre squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her determination. As they sat together watching the stars appear above their new home, he made a mental note to review the property records of the surrounding houses. After 15 years in real estate investment, he had learned that information was power. What neither Howard Whitman nor his friends realized was that Andre Johnson hadn't achieved success by backing down from challenges. If they wanted to play games with neighborhood bylaws and association rules, they were about to discover they'd picked the wrong family to harass. The Johnsons were home and they were staying. 2 weeks after moving in, the Johnsons woke to find an official-looking notice taped to their front door. Andre pulled it off before the kids could see it, scanning the document with growing frustration. What is it? Kira asked, tying her robe as she joined him on the porch. A citation from the city for improper yard maintenance and unauthorized landscaping, Andre replied, his voice tight. Apparently, the flowers I planted last week violate some obscure neighborhood code. Kira took the paper, reading it carefully. This can't be right. Mrs. Patterson across the street has the exact same flowers in her yard. Different rules for different people, Andre said quietly, not wanting Maya and Dion to hear. "I'm going to call the city office today." The citation was just the beginning. Over the next few days, the Johnsons discovered their mail had been tampered with, envelopes opened and resealed. Their garbage cans were mysteriously knocked over twice, leaving them to clean up the mess before heading to work. Someone called in a noise complaint when Dion was practicing piano in the middle of the afternoon, resulting in a visit from a clearly uncomfortable police officer. "I'm sorry to bother you," the young officer had said, shifting his weight from one foot to another. "We have to follow up on all calls, but it seems like a waste of time to me." The Thursday of the neighborhood association meeting arrived. Andre and Kira dressed carefully, he in a crisp button-down shirt and dress pants, she in a professional dress she typically wore for hospital board meetings. They asked David and his wife Rachel to recommend a babysitter for Maya and Dion. "We'll watch them," Rachel offered instead. "Our son would love the company, and this way you can focus on the meeting without worrying." The community center was only a short walk away, but they drove to avoid giving Howard and his friends anything else to criticize. As they entered the room, conversations halted. Roughly 30 people sat in folding chairs, and every head turned to watch them walk in. "Deep breath," Kira whispered, squeezing Andre's hand. Howard Whitman stood at a podium at the front of the room, his expression souring as he spotted them. Our newest residents have decided to join us. We were just about to begin." Andre nodded politely. "Thank you for having us. We're looking forward to getting involved in the community." They found seats near David, who gave them an encouraging nod. The meeting began with standard business: updates on the community garden, a report on fundraising for new playground equipment, discussions about the upcoming fall festival. Then Howard cleared his throat and transitioned to new business. "As many of you know, we've been working to preserve the historical character of our neighborhood for generations. The Anderson house at the end of Oak Street, which has recently changed hands," he paused, eyes flickering toward Andre and Kira, "has been of particular concern. It's one of the oldest homes in our district, and proper maintenance is essential." A thin man with wire-rimmed glasses stood up. Andre recognized him as the neighbor who had been photographing their house from the sidewalk the day before. "I'd like to propose that the association create a special oversight committee for historic properties," the man suggested. "Any exterior changes, no matter how small, should require pre-approval from this committee before work begins." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. A woman near the front raised her hand. "I've noticed some, shall we say, non-traditional landscaping choices at the old Anderson place. Perhaps we should establish guidelines for appropriate plantings as well, to maintain the period-appropriate appearance of the neighborhood." Andre felt his jaw tighten but kept his expression neutral. The entire meeting was clearly orchestrated to target them without ever directly mentioning race. Howard nodded solemnly. "Excellent points. I also think we should review the noise ordinances. Some new residents might not be aware of our community standards. May I say something?" Kira's voice rang out clear and steady. The room went silent, all eyes turning to her. Howard hesitated, then nodded stiffly. "Of course, Mrs. Johnson, is it?" "Dr. Johnson, actually." Kira stood, her posture perfect. "My husband and I bought the Anderson house because we fell in love with its history and character. We have no intention of changing its historical appearance. In fact, we've hired a restoration specialist to help us maintain its authentic features." She paused, looking around the room. "As for the landscaping, we planted native flowers that are actually historically accurate to the period when the house was built. I researched it quite thoroughly. And regarding noise, our son is learning piano. He practices for 30 minutes each day after school, well before any noise ordinances take effect." The room remained silent as she sat down. Andre fought back a smile, proud of his wife's composed response. A middle-aged woman in the back raised her hand. "I think we're getting off track. The issue isn't flowers or piano practice. It's about preserving property values. Some of us have concerns that certain changes might affect the market." The implication hung in the air. Andre stood this time. "I understand concerns about property values. As a real estate investor, it's literally my job to understand housing markets. I can assure you that restoration work and proper maintenance only increase property values." Howard cut in, his smile not reaching his eyes. "Well, we appreciate your professional insight, Mr. Johnson. Now let's vote on forming that oversight committee." The vote passed, with only David, Rachel, and a handful of others opposing. As the meeting continued, Andre and Kira sat quietly, taking mental notes of who seemed aligned with Howard and who might be potential allies. Walking home afterward, Kira sighed heavily. That was exactly what I expected, but somehow still worse. They're organized, Andre observed, and careful not to say anything explicitly racial. Just vague concerns about neighborhood character and property values. Did you see how they looked at us when I mentioned being a doctor? Like they couldn't believe it, Andre nodded. Same reaction I get when I mention being in real estate investment. They assume I'm lying or exaggerating. The next morning, they found their mailbox had been knocked off its post, lying damaged on the ground. Andre set up a small security camera that evening, disguised in one of the porch planters. The following week brought more harassment. An anonymous complaint about their trash bins being visible from the street. They weren't. Another citation for a peeling paint section that Andre had already scheduled to be repaired, and strange cars driving slowly past their house at night when Andre submitted the paperwork to join the neighborhood association. Board hoping to have some voice in the community decisions, he received a rejection letter claiming his application was incomplete, though he'd double-checked every form. After their car alarm went off at 3 a.m., waking the entire household, they reviewed the security footage to find someone had tried to scratch the paint. The image was too dark to identify the culprit. We should call the police, Kira insisted, watching Maya comfort a frightened Dion. Andre shook his head. And tell them what? That our neighbors are finding creative ways to make us feel unwelcome? They'll say it's not enough evidence, or worse, imply we're being paranoid. That weekend, Howard Whitman distributed flyers throughout the neighborhood announcing an emergency meeting to discuss escalating concerns about neighborhood preservation. The flyer specifically mentioned recent renovations at the Anderson house that threaten the historical integrity of our community, though Andre and Kira had done nothing but basic repairs and maintenance. They're building a case against us, Andre told David when he stopped by to show them the flyer. First the citations, now these accusations about renovations we haven't even made. They're trying to create a paper trail. David looked uncomfortable. Howard's been talking to people privately, suggesting that if your family stays, others will move in, and property values will drop. Some people are listening to him, especially the older residents who've been here for decades. Like Elizabeth Porter, Kira said. Exactly. Howard and his friends, they call themselves the Preservation Committee, are gathering signatures for some kind of petition. I don't know exactly what it's for, but it can't be good. After David left, Andre took out his laptop. I need to accelerate my research, he told Kira. I've been looking into property records for the neighborhood, but now I need to dig deeper. What are you thinking? Kira asked, watching him type. Howard and his friends think they have all the power here. They're used to controlling this neighborhood, keeping it exactly the way they want it. He looked up at her, a determined glint in his eye. But they don't know who they're dealing with. And they've made one critical mistake. What's that? They assumed we don't belong here. That we're outsiders who can be intimidated into leaving. Andre's fingers flew across the keyboard. They've never bothered to ask why we chose this specific neighborhood, this specific house. Kira sat beside him, their shoulders touching. Outside, Maya and Dion were finally playing in their yard, though they stayed close to the house, no longer comfortable exploring the neighborhood. We're not going anywhere, Kira said firmly. This is our home now. And Howard Whitman is about to learn that we fight for what's ours. The morning after Howard's emergency meeting announcement, a thick envelope arrived in the Johnsons' mailbox. Inside was a 10-page letter on Oakwood Heights Community Association letterhead, filled with dense legal language and citations of obscure neighborhood bylaws. Andre spread the papers across the kitchen table while Kira made coffee. They've really outdone themselves this time, he said, skimming through the document. According to this, we're in violation of at least 15 different rules. Kira leaned over his shoulder, frowning. The color of our front door? That's the original color from when the house was built. And apparently our mailbox is 2 inches taller than regulation height. Our porch light fixtures aren't period appropriate. And the rose bushes along the side of the house are not on the approved plant list. Andre shook his head in disbelief. They're giving us 30 days to rectify these violations or face fines and possible legal action. Legal action for roses? That's ridiculous. It's harassment, Andre corrected her. Perfectly legal harassment disguised as neighborhood preservation. I bet none of our neighbors have received similar letters about their properties. That afternoon, David stopped by with a worried expression. I heard about the letter. Howard had copies at his house. He was showing them to people, bragging about how he was handling the situation. Has he sent similar letters to other homeowners? Kira asked. David shook his head. No one else has gotten anything like it. Mrs. Patterson's yard is full of the same flowers they cited you for. And the Thompsons painted their shutters bright blue last month without any approval. Andre wasn't surprised. It's never been about the rules. It's about who they want living here and who they don't. Over the next week, the pressure intensified. A formal notice arrived stating that the Special Oversight Committee would be conducting an inspection of their property. When Andre called the city planning office to verify if this committee had any legal authority, he was told they didn't. But the woman on the phone warned him that neighborhood associations could still make life difficult for homeowners who didn't comply. Just be careful, she advised. These old neighborhoods have their own power structures. The city doesn't like to get involved in these disputes. On Saturday morning, Andre was in the backyard with a landscaper, discussing the removal of a dead tree that posed a safety hazard, when they heard raised voices from the front of the house. He rounded the corner to find a group of about 15 neighbors led by Howard and Elizabeth Porter, standing on the sidewalk with signs reading, "Preserve our history and protect Oakwood Heights." What's going on here? Andre asked, approaching the group. Howard stepped forward, his chin raised. We're protesting the unauthorized changes to a historic property. That tree is over 100 years old and part of the neighborhood's character. It's dead and at risk of falling, Andre explained, keeping his voice calm despite the absurdity of the situation. The arborist said it could damage our house or hurt someone if we don't remove it. Convenient excuse, Elizabeth Porter muttered, loud enough for everyone to hear. First the tree, then what else will they destroy? The landscaper, a middle-aged man named Lou who had worked in the neighborhood for decades, stepped up beside Andre. I've removed 3 similar trees from this street in the past year. The Porter house had 2 taken out last spring. This one's a hazard, plain and simple. Some protesters looked uncomfortable at this information, but Howard pressed on. We have the right to protect our neighborhood from unwanted changes. You have the right to stand on the public sidewalk, Andre acknowledged. But that's about it. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to do. As he turned to go back to the yard, he heard Howard's voice, lower but still audible. This is just the beginning. They'll see what happens when people don't respect traditions. That evening, as the family ate dinner, Maya picked at her food without her usual appetite. Something wrong with the lasagna? Kira asked gently. Maya shrugged, then finally looked up. Why won't anyone let me join the neighborhood swim team? Coach Wilson said all the spots were filled, but then Lily from my class got added yesterday. Andre and Kira exchanged a look. It was the 3rd activity Maya had been excluded from since they moved in. I'm sorry, sweetheart, Kira said. Sometimes people can be unfair. Is it because we're black? Maya asked bluntly. At 12, she was old enough to recognize what was happening. The question hung in the air. Dion stopped eating, watching his parents for their response. Yes, Andre said finally, deciding honesty was important. Some people judge others based on the color of their skin, rather than who they are as people. It's wrong and it's not your fault. But it's not fair, Dion protested. No one will play with me at recess, and Jason from next door told me his parents said he can't come to our house. Kira reached across the table to squeeze his hand. It's not fair at all. But we're going to get through this together. This is our home, and we belong here just as much as anyone else. Later that night, after the kids were in bed, Andre and Kira sat in the living room, discussing their options. We could file a discrimination complaint, Kira suggested. Andre sighed. With what proof? Everything they're doing is carefully worded to avoid any explicit mention of race. The letter cites bylaw violations, not the fact that we're black. The protest was about historical preservation, not keeping black families out of the neighborhood. So we just take it? Let them bully us and exclude our children? No, Andre said firmly. We fight back, but we have to be smart about it. I've been working on something, but I need a little more time. The next morning, Dion came running inside, his face streaked with tears. Dad, come quick. Andre followed him to the garage door that faced the side street. Spray painted across it in jagged red letters was a single word: Leave. His stomach clenched as he pulled out his phone to take pictures of the vandalism. This was no longer just harassment, it was a direct threat. Go inside, buddy, he told Dion gently. Tell Mom I need her to come out here, but you stay inside, okay? As Dion ran to get Kira, Andre noticed Mrs. Porter watching from her window across the street. Their eyes met briefly before she let the curtain fall back into place. When Kira saw the graffiti, her hand flew to her mouth. We need to call the police, this time Andre agreed. The officer who responded seemed genuinely concerned, took photographs, and filed a report, but warned them that without witnesses or video evidence, it would be difficult to prove who was responsible. We'll increase patrols in the area, he promised, and you might want to consider installing more security cameras. That evening, Andre found a flyer in their mailbox, the same one that had apparently been distributed to every house in the neighborhood. The heading read, Proposal for a Private Community. The text outlined a plan to convert Oakwood Heights into a gated community, with strict admission requirements and enhanced property standards that would protect investments and preserve neighborhood character. Homeowners would be required to apply for membership in the new association, with existing residents given priority. They're not even trying to hide it anymore, Kira said, reading over his shoulder. This is about keeping people like us out. Howard's getting desperate, Andre replied. He knows the graffiti crossed a line, so now he's trying another angle. Make the neighborhood literally closed off. David called an hour later, his voice tense. Did you see the flyer? Howard's called another meeting for tomorrow night. He's telling everyone he has a major announcement that will solve the problem once and for all. We'll be there, Andre assured him. After hanging up, he went to his home office and unlocked the bottom drawer of his desk. Inside was a thick folder of documents, property records, ownership certificates, and rental agreements, the results of his research over the past weeks. Kira stood in the doorway, watching him. Is it time? Andre nodded, a determined expression on his face. It's time. Howard wants to make a big announcement tomorrow? Well, I've got one of my own. Are you sure this is the right move? It could make things worse. They vandalized our home, Kira. They're trying to exclude our children. They're not going to stop unless we make them. He looked up at his wife. I didn't want to use this information this way, but they've left us no choice. The next evening, the community center was packed. Every resident of Oakwood Heights seemed to be present, the room humming with anticipation. Howard stood at the podium looking more confident than ever. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, or he began, his voice carrying across the room. As you know, our historic neighborhood has faced some challenges in recent months. But tonight, I'm proposing a solution that will protect our community for generations to come. He launched into a detailed presentation about converting to a private community, with himself as the head of the new governing board. The plan included substantial fees for membership applications, strict architectural guidelines, and a review process for all potential residents. With these measures in place, Howard concluded, we can ensure that Oakwood Heights maintains its special character and prestigious status. Now, I'd like to open the floor for questions before we vote on moving forward with this proposal. Andre stood up, straightening his tie. I have a question, Howard. All heads turned toward him. Howard's smile tightened. Yes, Mr. Johnson. Before we vote on anything, I think there's some important information everyone should know about who actually owns property in this neighborhood. Howard's confident expression faltered for the first time. I'm not sure what that has to do with. It has everything to do with your proposal, Andre interrupted, walking toward the front of the room. Because before you can create a private community, you might want to check who actually holds the deeds to these houses. The room fell silent as Andre reached the podium, ready to reveal what he'd discovered. The community center fell silent as Andre stood at the podium. Howard took a step back, his usual confidence faltering as Andre opened his folder and laid several documents on the table. For those who don't know me well, Andre began, his voice steady, my background is in real estate investment. I've spent 15 years building a company called Horizon Urban Development that specializes in neighborhood revitalization projects. Howard tried to interrupt. I don't see how your resume is relevant to. It's extremely relevant, Andre continued calmly, because Horizon Urban Development has been investing in Oakwood Heights for the past 7 years. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Howard's face reddened. What do you mean, investing? Elizabeth Porter called out from her seat in the front row. Andre looked directly at her. I mean purchasing properties, Mrs. Porter. Starting with the old Wilson estate that was sold after Mr. Wilson passed away in 2018. Elizabeth's eyes widened in recognition. That was bought by Oak Street Holdings. Yes, Andre nodded. Oak Street Holdings is a subsidiary of Horizon Urban Development. My company. The murmurs grew louder. Andre continued, his voice rising just enough to be heard over the crowd. Over the years, we've acquired several properties in this neighborhood through various subsidiaries. The rental house on Maple that the Taylor family lives in, that's managed by Horizon Property Management, another of our companies. Heads turned toward a young white couple sitting near the back, who looked as surprised as everyone else. In fact, Andre said, turning a page in his documents, Horizon now owns or manages approximately 68% of the residential properties in Oakwood Heights. The room erupted. Howard slammed his hand on the table. That's impossible. We would know if some outside company was buying up our neighborhood. Would you? Andre asked. Most transactions were handled through different subsidiaries with local addresses. The previous owners received fair market value, often above market actually, and many of the residents continued living in their homes as renters, with management handled by local companies. We were very careful not to disrupt the character of the neighborhood. He turned to look directly at Howard. Including your house, Mr. Whitman. The color drained from Howard's face. What are you talking about? When you divorced 3 years ago and your ex-wife wanted to sell, you couldn't afford to buy her out. Remember who purchased the property and then offered you a very reasonable 5-year lease? Valley View Properties. Andre paused. Another Horizon subsidiary. Howard stumbled back, grabbing the edge of a nearby chair for support. The room had gone from chaotic noise to stunned silence. You're telling us you're our landlord? Someone asked from the crowd. Andre shook his head. Not me personally. Horizon Urban Development. I'm the founder and CEO, but it's a company with investors and a board. We've been quietly investing in promising neighborhoods throughout the city for years, focusing on historically significant areas that were being neglected by traditional development. Why keep it secret? David asked, sounding genuinely curious rather than accusatory. We've found that announcing our presence tends to artificially inflate property values before we can complete our acquisition strategy, Andre explained. And more importantly, we wanted to understand the neighborhood dynamics before making our long-term plans known. He looked around the room, his expression serious. We certainly got that understanding over the past few weeks, didn't we? Elizabeth Porter stood up, her voice shaking with anger. So this was all a trick? Move your family in, pretend to be just another homeowner while secretly owning half the neighborhood. No trick, Mrs. Porter, Andre replied. We chose the Anderson house because we loved it, and because this neighborhood has excellent schools for our children. My role at Horizon was irrelevant to our decision to make this our family home. At least it was until certain residents decided to harass us, exclude our children, and vandalize our property. Howard had recovered enough to speak again, though his voice was strained. You can't prove any of that was targeted at you specifically. Andre raised an eyebrow. Really? The 15-page violation notice that no other homeowner received? The mysteriously full swim team that still had room for white children? The word leave spray-painted on our garage? He shook his head. But that's not even the point now. He turned to address the entire room. The point is that your plan to create a private community with strict admission requirements isn't going to work, because Horizon Urban Development owns most of the properties. And as the majority property owner, we have certain legal rights regarding any changes to neighborhood governance. The implications settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Howard sank into a chair, his planned triumph completely shattered. A middle-aged man stood up from the back row. So what happens now? You evict us all? Tear down our homes for some fancy development? Absolutely not, Andre said firmly. That has never been Horizon's business model. We invest in neighborhoods because we believe in preserving their character while making them more vibrant and inclusive. He closed his folder and looked around the room, making eye contact with as many people as possible. Nothing has to change for anyone who treats their neighbors with respect and dignity. Your rental agreements remain exactly as they are, but there will be some changes to how this neighborhood is governed moving forward. Andre outlined a new vision, a truly representative neighborhood association with term limits and transparent processes. community improvement projects that would enhance property values for everyone, educational programs about the neighborhood's history that would involve the local schools. And one more thing, he added, any form of harassment or discrimination against any resident for their race, religion, sexuality, or any other reason will result in immediate lease termination for renters or legal action for homeowners. The room remained silent as Andre stepped away from the podium. Kira joined him, taking his hand in a visible show of support. Howard stood up, his face a mask of barely contained rage. You won't get away with this. There are laws against predatory buying practices. I'll call my attorney tonight. Andre nodded calmly. You're welcome to do that, but I think you'll find that Horizon has followed every legal requirement meticulously. We're very careful about that. As the meeting broke up, people gathered in small groups talking in hushed voices. Some looked angry, others confused, and a few seemed almost relieved. David approached Andre and Kira, shaking his head in amazement. I don't even have words, he said. You owned Howard's house the whole time he was trying to drive you out? Ironic, isn't it? Andre replied with a small smile. But why wait so long to tell everyone? You could have stopped all this harassment weeks ago. Kira answered this time. We wanted to give people a chance to show their true colors without the influence of knowing Andre's position. To see who would stand up for what's right regardless of who owned what. She glanced meaningfully at David and Rachel. Some people passed that test with flying colors. As they walked home in the cool evening air, Andre and Kira knew the battle wasn't entirely over. There would be anger, resistance, and possibly legal challenges from Howard and his allies, but the balance of power had shifted dramatically. Do you think it will make a difference? Kira asked quietly. Will attitudes really change or just go underground? Some of both, probably, Andre admitted. People like Howard rarely have genuine changes of heart, but others might start to question their assumptions when they realize they've been comfortable renting from a black-owned company all this time. And our kids? Will things get better for them? Andre squeezed her hand. I think so. The school principal called me back today about Maya's swim team situation. Suddenly there's an opening for her. Kira laughed softly. Amazing how that works. When they reached their home, their real home, the one they had chosen for their family regardless of business interests, they found someone had left a small potted plant on their porch steps. Attached was a handwritten note. Welcome to the neighborhood. I'm sorry it took so long to say that. Nancy from across the street. It's a start, Kira said, picking up the plant. Andre nodded, looking up at the grand old house that had become the center of so much conflict. A small one, but enough to build on. Inside, Maya and Dion were waiting eagerly to hear what had happened at the meeting. As Andre began to explain in terms they could understand, he realized that the most important audience for tonight's revelation wasn't Howard or the other neighbors. It was his children, watching to see how their parents would handle injustice. Did we win? Dion asked simply. Andre ruffled his son's hair. We stood up for ourselves. That's always a win, buddy, always. The weeks following Andre's revelation at the community center brought a strange new quiet to Oakwood Heights. The protest signs disappeared. The citations stopped arriving. No more complaints were filed about piano practice or flower choices. It was as if the neighborhood was holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Some residents avoided the Johnsons entirely, crossing the street when they saw them coming, or suddenly finding their hedges needed trimming when Andre or Kira tried to wave hello. Others made awkward attempts at friendliness, stopping by with baked goods or invitations to backyard barbecues that felt forced but well-intentioned. It's like they just realized we're human, Kira commented one evening as they sorted through 3 separate invitations to neighborhood gatherings. They realized we have power. Andre corrected her gently. That's different from seeing our humanity. True to his word, Andre had begun implementing changes to the neighborhood governance structure. The first step was dissolving the self-appointed preservation committee that Howard had used to target them. In its place, a new elected neighborhood council was formed with term limits and transparent voting procedures. To everyone's surprise, Andre declined to run for a position. I don't want to create a different kind of imbalance, he explained when David questioned his decision. The goal is fairness, not replacing one group's control with another. Howard Whitman remained conspicuously absent from community events. Rumors circulated that he had consulted multiple attorneys all of whom confirmed that Horizon's property acquisitions were entirely legal. Some said he was planning to move as soon as his lease expired. Others claimed he was organizing resistance among the remaining homeowners who weren't under Horizon's umbrella. The truth emerged on a rainy Tuesday morning when Howard appeared on the Johnsons' doorstep. Soaking wet and looking miserable, Andre opened the door, surprised to find his former antagonist standing there. "Mr. Whitman, this is unexpected." Howard shifted uncomfortably. "Can I come in? Just for a minute?" Andre hesitated, then stepped aside to let him enter. Kira, who had been working from home that day, appeared in the hallway, her expression guarded. "I'll be brief," Howard said, declining Andre's offer to sit. "I've been offered a job in Phoenix. I'll be leaving at the end of the month." He paused, clearly struggling with what he wanted to say next. "I need to know what your plans are for my house, the house I'm renting from your company." Andre studied the man before him. Howard looked smaller somehow. The bluster and confidence drained away. "The lease agreement stands as written," Andre said simply. "You have another 2 years if you want them. If you choose to break the lease for your move, we'll handle it according to the terms in your contract. No penalties beyond what's already specified." Howard seemed surprised. "You're not going to use this as an opportunity to get back at me? After everything that happened?" Kira stepped forward. "That's not who we are, Mr. Whitman, and it's not how we do business." Howard looked down at his wet shoes. "My daughter called me last week. She read about what happened here in the community newsletter. She was not happy with my behavior." "I'm sorry to hear that," Andre said, meaning it. "Family rifts were never something to celebrate. She reminded me that her best friend from college is black, that her boyfriend is Latino." Howard shook his head slowly. "She asked me when I became this person and said she wouldn't bring her children to visit if this was who I really was." The admission hung in the air between them. No one spoke for a long moment. Finally, Howard looked up. "I'm not going to pretend to have some overnight transformation, but I've been thinking a lot about what happened here, about what I did." He took a deep breath. "I'm sorry. For the harassment. For the vandalism. You did that?" Kira interrupted, her voice sharp. Howard nodded, his face flushed with shame. "Not personally. I paid some teenager to do it. I'm not proud of it." Andre's jaw tightened, but he kept his voice level. "I appreciate your honesty, Mr. Whitman, and your apology. But you understand that words only go so far." "I know," Howard said quietly. "That's why I've also written a formal apology to the neighborhood association, admitting what I did and taking full responsibility. They'll get it tomorrow." After Howard left, Kira turned to Andre. "Do you believe him? That he's really sorry?" Andre considered the question carefully. "I think he's sorry he got caught. Sorry his daughter is upset with him. But it's a start. Real change takes time." Over the next several months, Oakwood Heights began a gradual transformation. With the new neighborhood council in place, more diverse voices were heard at community meetings. The monthly newsletter, once filled with complaints about property violations, now highlighted community achievements and upcoming events. Maya finally joined the swim team, where she quickly became one of the strongest competitors. Dayon found friends who shared his love of basketball, and a small court was installed in the community park after several families petitioned for it. Not everyone embraced the changes. Elizabeth Porter and a few other longtime residents formed what they called a historical society that sometimes felt like a shadow version of the old power structure. But their influence was limited without Howard's leadership and financial backing. As summer approached, Andre and Horizon Urban Development announced their long-term vision for the neighborhood, a balanced approach to preservation and progress. Historic homes would receive restoration grants to maintain their character, while community spaces would be updated to serve modern needs. Most importantly, a portion of rental income from Horizon-owned properties would fund scholarships for neighborhood children and support local businesses. "We're not interested in gentrification that displaces people," Andre explained at the presentation. "We want to lift the entire community together." The real test came in July when the annual Oakwood Heights Summer Festival was scheduled. In previous years, the event had been an exclusive affair, with invitations carefully controlled by Howard's committee. This year, the new council voted to make it truly public, inviting residents from surrounding neighborhoods and featuring diverse food vendors and musicians. On the morning of the festival, Andre stood on his porch watching volunteers set up booths along the tree-lined street. "Penny for your thoughts," Kira said, handing him a cup of coffee. "Just thinking about how much has changed in 6 months," he replied, "and how much hasn't." She followed his gaze to where Elizabeth Porter was instructing younger volunteers with the same imperious tone she'd always used. "Some things take longer," Kira acknowledged. "But look over there." Near the face-painting booth, Maya was laughing with a group of children from her school, a mixed group that included white, black, and Asian kids all helping each other hang decorations. "That's the future," Andre said softly. "That's what matters." The festival exceeded everyone's expectations. Over 500 people attended throughout the day, creating a vibrant atmosphere unlike anything Oakwood Heights had seen before. Food trucks served everything from barbecue to tamales to jerk chicken. A local jazz band played in the park, and children raced between activity booths set up on closed-off streets. Andre was helping at the lemonade stand when he noticed a familiar figure approaching. Howard Whitman, back for a visit from Phoenix. "I almost didn't recognize the place," Howard said, looking around at the transformed neighborhood. "It's so alive." Andre handed him a cup of lemonade. "That's what happens when everyone is welcome." Howard nodded slowly. "My daughter's here too, with her boyfriend. She wanted to see the changes for herself." He hesitated. "She's considering moving back to the area." "She'd be welcome," Andre said sincerely. As the day wound down and sunset painted the old Victorian houses in warm golden light, the community gathered in the park for an impromptu concert. Dion, who had been taking drumming lessons, joined the band for a song, beaming with pride as people clapped along. Kira leaned against Andre's shoulder. "Remember that first day? When no one would even say hello?" "Hard to forget," he replied, watching as David's wife Rachel showed Maya a dance move, both of them laughing. "Do you think we did the right thing? Using our position this way?" Andre considered the question seriously. "I think power is neutral. It's how you use it that matters. We could have evicted everyone who was unkind to us. We could have raised rents or imposed our own strict rules. But that would have made us no better than they were." Kira finished his thought. "Exactly. Real change doesn't come from forcing people to behave differently. It comes from creating conditions where they can choose to be better." As if to illustrate his point, they watched Elizabeth Porter reluctantly accept a plate of food from a Jamaican vendor, then return minutes later for seconds, engaging in what appeared to be genuine conversation. 1 year after moving into the old Anderson house, the Johnsons hosted the first annual Oakwood Heights block party on their spacious lawn. Nearly every resident attended, bringing dishes and stories to share. The historic homes stood as they always had, their elegant facades unchanged. But the spirit of the neighborhood had undergone a profound transformation. Maya and Dion raced around with their friends, no longer constrained by invisible boundaries of who could play with whom. David and Rachel had been elected to the neighborhood council. Even Mrs. Porter had grudgingly